Hi, and welcome to VIBEZ Daily. This is a daily devotional curated by VIBEZ Church to help you practice the way of Jesus and be all that God has called you to be. You have joined us for our year-long series titled Devoted. Acts 2:42 tells us that the followers of Jesus were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. This podcast was created to provide context and commentary for what you read each day. Just before our friends begin discussing today's reading, we want to invite you not only for fellowship, but for prayer as well. We have created the VIBE Daily Chat Group to offer you fellowship and a community where you can state your observations, ask questions about the reading or the podcast. You can join us by downloading the VIBEZ Church app in your favorite app store. Click Join the Conversation and join us today. And finally, we hope that you can join us for prayer. Prayer happens Monday through Friday, and more information on that can be found on the VIBEZ Church app under prayer. Now, let's begin our conversation on today's reading.
Well, welcome back to the VIBEZ Daily Podcast. We are on day 114. We have started First Chronicles yesterday. We are back in First Chronicles with only 2 chapters today. And I am with my lovely friend, Shay.
Hello, welcome to Texas.
We still here in Texas. And so this has been a pleasure to have Shay on with me. And we're trying to hold it down without Pastor Eric. Hope we make him proud. But but here we are, back in the genealogies again. We have 2 brief chapters, 4 and 5. And we'll try and slow down. But it might not be much today. We might not get a whole lot in, but let's talk about this descendants of Judah.
Yeah, so we took it back again.
Yeah,
going through all these people from the past, and like we talked about yesterday, just trying to remember some of these names. But also realizing where some of these ites and rights come from.
Where all these nations, these little nations coming from,
But so in chapter 4, verse 9, they talk about Jabez.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that stuck out to me. It says Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother called him by his name Jabez because I bore him in pain. And so I just thought that was interesting that was his name, number one, because to be born in pain and given that name.
Yeah.
But then the story keeps going, and it talks about how he called upon God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my border, and that your hand might be with me, and that you would keep me from harm, so that I might not bring pain." And so just the fact that he was asking God to not be what his name meant was interesting. But he also asked for land in the midst of that. But God granted it. So that was the next part of what it says. But God was faithful and granted what he asked.
Which is so deep. It's so deep that, this is what you're called, but that's not what you want to be all the time, right? And now what tripped me up when I read this was she bore him in pain, and I'm like, okay, listen here, after 4 kids, y'all have all been painful. So I'm trying to figure out
what was different.
What was different? Like, were the other ones with no pain? Somebody gotta explain something to me. Were the other ones without kids?
You don't be giving enough details.
I need the details. I need the details here, because I'm trying to figure out, was there no pain before?
But to also give that to your son.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It could have been anything else, because I know they named them after things that were going on or things that they physically had. But that one is tough.
It is, but I love to see that the Lord is still elevating him, right? Like he was head and shoulders above his brothers, right? And more honorable than them, and despite what they was calling him. That's beautiful.
But what I would also wonder what made him more honorable.
Yeah.
What set him apart from the rest of his family.
Yeah, I wonder too. That's good. Like when people say like, oh, they were blessed or they were honorable. Yeah, what did that actually look like, right? I wonder. Yeah. So we keep going, and once again, these genealogies go through to like, yeah, like to the exile and everything. But now here we jump down, like you said. So Reuben doesn't get the shine. Here it starts with Judah, and now here we go on to Simeon, the other son of I'm about to say Levi of Israel. So these are all the heads of the tribes of Israel. So Simeon, and yeah.
So I don't think I quite understood what this story was about. But within Simeon's family lineage, they get to a part in verse 38 where they take a break from genealogy and actually share a story.
Yeah, they were saying these were princes by name, right? And their father's house is greatly increased. And so I don't know if that was just to say like these are like great things were coming from these sons, or like these are like more notable, but yeah.
It talks about how they were like favored and they had peace and land, and they took land that formerly belonged to him.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting little break from this person and this person.
Yeah.
And this person. Just to share a story.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, and it says these ones were in the days of Hezekiah. So here we are, like past David. We are down the line in some of these kings right before the exile. And it does seem like the Lord was with them, right? Like, that's beautiful. But it still gives us like little insights of what was happening. Because sometimes when it comes to like the kings, all we heard was like about the kings, right? And not about like the people. So I do love that like this gives us insight of what was happening with some of like the more common people, kind of, although they were princes.
I guess that's true.
I guess they're still princes. They're still royalty.
It wasn't the common folks.
Yeah, it wasn't too common, I guess. Well, there's millions of them, so I guess we can't highlight all the fun facts about them. But yeah.
And then it jumps into the next son, who we think would have been the first son mentioned, but they just skipped right over him.
And clearly gave reasons for why.
Yes, they did. Immediately, first verse in chapter 5, he defiled his father's couch, and his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, the sons of Israel.
Yes, he could not be enrolled as the oldest son. And it's interesting here that like, okay, so the birthright went to Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. But here it even still mentions Judah, right? So Judah became strong among his brothers and chief name from him, yet the birthright belonged to Joseph. And so I think they made it clear that like, although, yes, Judah keeps being put at the top, the actual birthright went to Joseph's sons, like you mentioned yesterday.
Yes.
For us, yeah.
It's like God, although we have an order, God has a different order or a different plan set. And he was not Joseph.
And I love how the author clarified this for us, though, too, because he's like, for the audience that he's writing this for, he's like, okay, yeah, all these prophecies that we're talking about, I want everybody to highlight and focus in on Judah, but just know that the birthright still went to Joseph. And it was taken from Reuben. So like, but we focus on Judah because that's where they said the Messiah is coming from. So he's like, you know, keeping us. Yeah.
It still amazes me. Like they were captured, went to Babylon, and came back because I was listening to something and talk about when they go into those towns, they would completely destroy everything, and destroy their history.
Right.
But the fact that this made it out is incredible, and that someone can remember and write it down. And now it's 2024, and we're still being able to read about it.
Isn't that crazy? That is amazing. No, like for real. You're so silly.
Why is my phone going off?
It's all good. He'll cut this out too. But that is so. That's so amazing because like you said, it's been so long, and like even all these like big name kings and people who were super affluent. Like, we don't even have a lot of their records. But here,
it's gone.
Yeah, they're gone. But the Lord has allowed this to be preserved because he's like, no, I didn't do this for nothing.
Y'all don't know about Jesus.
I don't know. Y'all gonna know. And except for those who are like the scholarly type, who need the genealogy, like, the Jews, and one need to trace back and need to, those facts, and, I'll give that to you too. Right here. So
for me, reading it has made it more real. I know that Jesus is a real person, and I know that David was a real person, but like reading it and hearing these little tidbits makes it a fact.
Yeah.
And so they weren't just somebody I'm reading in a storybook. These people lived. This was their families. This is who they fought.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps me grounded to know these are people.
Mm-hmm.
This happened.
It's like a history book for real.
Yes.
Like, it's literally a history book, which is amazing because, like you said, here we are with this writer hundreds of years probably after, Saul and David. And here in verse 10, he's mentioning Saul, right? Like, you can tell he lived during this time, but he's still referring to events that have happened, like as if it was history for him too, right? Like, and that's why all these books, they go together, and I just love it because here it's just like, these are people. It says, and in the days of Saul, in verse 10, they waged war against the Hagrites who fell in their hand. They lived in their tents throughout all the region of East Gilead. And I'm just like, how would you know that?
I don't know.
How would you know that? Unless the history was close enough to you that you would know that, So, yeah, and then, but here he says, we even hear in verse 6, like, this king of Assyria is taking people away into exile, these Reubenites. And so, half of the tribe, or the tribe of Reuben, stayed on the other side of the Jordan. And so I think it was here, and then mentioned in verse 18, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh had valiant men who carried shield, sword, and drew the bow, expert in war. So like praising them in their war status. But down in verse 26 is when we're talking about how they were marched off by the king of Assyria. And they actually didn't come back. It seems like he said he took them into exile, namely the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, and brought them to Hala, Habor, and Hara in the river Gazon to this day. And so it doesn't even seem like they even came back from exile.
Like, pick up on that.
Yeah, right? Like the other ones did. So those who got taken...
Everybody else was coming back.
Mm-hmm. The ones who got snatched by Babylon, the Lord allowed them to come back. And that was like the other tribes in Judah. But these ones didn't seem like they came back from exile. Yeah, exactly. So it's like when they say this stuff like to this day, like to this day. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
But the sentence that stood out to me before, we just talked about that, or verse 25, is they broke faith with God.
Yes.
And whored after other gods.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way that's written,
goodness,
it's like a gut punch.
Yeah, that's strong language. Mm-hmm. Whom God had destroyed before them. So yeah, so like God was, I mean, you see God in all of it, because like you said, right afterwards, it says, so God, Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria. So like this was what God's doing in all of it, like He said He would. If you leave me and abandon me and go worship these other gods, I'm gonna have to send these people to come get you.
It's crazy. Every chapter that we've read, He says the same thing to whoever is pointed at that moment.
Facts.
And then 2 chapters later, it all falls apart.
It happens. Yeah. It happens just like He said He was. He would. So yeah, it makes me think in my mind, like, okay, let me be devoted to the Lord.
Because I don't want to be exiled.
I don't need the bad things to be coming because I didn't turned away from the Lord. I don't need that at all. So, yeah, so it's good. Anything else that stands out to you? It's chapter 4 or 5.
I don't have anything else.
Yeah.
I went through all the interesting facts.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it then. We'll wrap up there for chapters 4 and 5. And you can meet us back here tomorrow. We'll be going through chapters 6, 7, and 8. More genealogy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us for the VIBEZ Daily podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or download our favorite, the VIBEZ Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey